Welcome back to Connecticut Inside Out. I'll be your host this evening. I'm Amanda Gabriel.
I'm Steve Gifford.
And I'm Tim Gabriel.
And tonight we have the pleasure of hosting two of my very favorite people in the whole wide world, Kadruta and Ben Lobick. Hi, Kadruta and Ben.
Hello.
Hello. Now, these two have risen to fame within North Haven for being the organizers. Yes, or infamy, yes.
Yeah.
For being the organizers of the recent gathering on the green, the recent gathering in support of Black Lives Matter, in support of the statement that the police put out, within our town put out, against the recent killing of George Floyd. So Kadruta and Ben, say hi and introduce yourself.
Hello. Hi, I'm Benjamin Lobick. Been residing in North Haven now about 7 years.
Yep.
Originally from Ohio. Go Ohio State Buckeyes. Have to get the plug. Go ahead.
I'm Kadruta Lobick. I am actually originally from Romania, and I moved to the United States in 2005 for school. Then I met him, and then we moved to North Haven in 2012. So we have been residents of this community for a while. We got to meet a lot of people.
Yes.
So,
a lot of friends.
guys, this is a question that's come up on other podcasts of ours. And before we go into actual deep substantive things, how did you guys end up in North Haven of all places?
Well, we unfortunately are still landlords in New Haven, and we didn't like the schools. We didn't like the taxes. We didn't like the lack of services, and we wanted to move, but she was still in school. I was working, and we didn't want to go too far. And when we looked around, North Haven ticked all the boxes for a great place to live, so we moved here.
Well, we are North Haven's leading podcast. We like to repeat that, and no one has come yet. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Nobody's coming for that throne.
Yeah, with nobody. That's okay. We're fine with that.
It's a great community to
Oh,
be in.
we really love it here.
It really is. And Ben, I think that your mustache adds so much to this community. Can we talk just for a second about my mustachioed friend, Ben? Because that is an amazing mustache, my friend.
Well, it's taken a couple years to get to this, but it's a way to be remembered.
Yeah.
A faceless member of the crowd, you're not remembered. You're just one of the crowd. But when you have the mustache, people tend to say, "Oh, that guy."
That mustache guy. Right, I know.
It's good and bad, it's good and bad, because now we are the North Haven miscreants, and everybody's gonna know. But let me tell you, he single-handedly keeps the mustache wax industry in business.
Nice. But I feel like nobody could see it because everybody was really responsible and wearing masks on the green, so they missed out on your mustache. So now, thanks to technology, everybody can see your amazing mustache. So this is
I feel like it's the kind of local flavor that North Haven desperately needs.
Yeah,
so.
I agree. It's a great community. It could use a little more local flavor though. So good point.
Yeah, you gotta have at least one mustache guy in town.
Yeah.
No kidding.
As someone who's normally clean shaven, I'm enjoying being covered with a mask most of the time as a shameless, less shameful way to get away with whatever I'm doing right now. I'm not even.
So guys, let's talk a little bit about what led you to organize the gathering on the green. Like what prompted this action? Yeah.
Yeah, right. We were just honestly, we were just looking for an opportunity to loot the downtown stores. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Wait, you did a terrible job.
I almost spit out my White Claw. Yikes.
I didn't see any broken glass at all.
It was
very disappointed.
I mean, it was an organic, I think, decision. It started off just like everybody else, being horrified with what was happening in our country, right? I think all of us have watched the George Floyd video, and I personally couldn't sleep for a couple of nights. And that kept me up thinking about what is happening in our country. And then I started thinking about what is happening in our community. And I think we are a great community of friends here. But it's uncomfortable for me to say this, but we have a racial disparity problem here in North Haven. And I felt like somebody needed to address this head on. Now, just to make this clear, we are not affiliated with any kind of party. We're not affiliated with the Black Lives Matter movement, although we are supporters. I think it was just an organic decision. It started off with just Ben and myself thinking, well, somebody's got to say something in our community. So it started off with the two of us making some signs and going to the green together. And then we talked to Wayne Lavender, our friend Wayne Lavender, who's the pastor of the Methodist Church here in town. And he said, well, if you guys are making a sign, I'm going to make a sign, and the three of us are going to have to stand up together. And then other people have joined, and they said, well, we're going to make a sign. And then I looked at Ben and I said, well, I think we should let our community know that we're doing this to give people an opportunity to be able to speak. And I think we need to create this avenue to have a dialogue in our community where we can all come together and confront these problems head on, as uncomfortable as we are about them. And then you've seen it turn into, we were thinking maybe 30 people would come, 300 showed up. And it was an amazing moment, I thought. We had people I went in there, and when I saw all those young people walking on the green, it was just this most amazing things. And they had things to say to us. They taught us so much. So it grew into what I think was an amazing moment for the community. And hopefully a great starting point for some other great things to happen next.
So Kadruda, I want to get into the details of it, but North Haven is I looked it up beforehand, 93% white community.
Right.
I don't think we've had any giant incidents of police.
No,
police.
we didn't.
What do you think the need or the necessity was to have this in North Haven?
Well, I'll give you one example. Okay, I did some research. And I will refer now to our police Facebook posts, right? Where they detail incidents that are happening. And I'll give you two examples. One was 4 Black teenagers, young men, stole a car, and then they drove it into the big white parking lot. And one of them jumped out of the car and tried to snatch a lady's purse. Obviously not a good thing. And so the lady wrestled him, apparently her wallet fell out, whatever, and then she let go of the purse, he got in the car and drove. 74 to 75% of the comments from our community stated were either related to the Second Amendment or stated that either the lady had the purse or I'm sorry I wasn't there with my gun to shoot the person who grabbed the purse, right? Now, if you study the penal law, you will find that the punishment for stealing is definitely not, right? It's definitely not capital.
Not execution,
Okay?
no.
No, not execution. Now I'll give you a second example that I saw. There was a stabbing on Washington Avenue a while ago. There was a lot to that story, but the original story that broke out was somebody stabbed somebody in a car, right? So I would think that's a lot heavier than a purse snatching. I looked through every single comment on that particular announcement on our police Facebook page. Not a single person had said there should have been a gun involved, Second Amendment. And you know why? Because the suspect was white. I mean, clearly the line of thought in our community here is skewed.
At least for the vocal folks that are on that forum.
There's this belief in our town that nothing ever happens here, that things are good. But you have heard from members of our Black community, and you have heard from members of our Hispanic community last Saturday that things do happen. And so this is a community we've all elected to raise our children into. So now the question is, what's the legacy we're going to give them?
That's a lot of what it was about, because
this is what it was all about.
If a Black person was caught shoplifting, doesn't mean you should execute them. If a white person attempted murder, well, they should just be arrested. You know, that kind of dichotomy between how the vocal members of the community forum are going, it's unbalanced. And we thought that that was unfair, that we needed to have a more balanced discussion and talk about everything. You know, if somebody's steals a car and tries to steal a purse, they should be arrested. They should deserve their crime. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you don't shoot them down in the street. If somebody is trying to stab somebody with a knife in self-defense, you know, things happen. But if it's your life is at risk, you have to protect your life.
And we have heard from members of the African American community here in town that they are afraid to send their children to our schools, that they don't want to send their children to our high schools. Those are uncomfortable truths, and our community needs to face them head on. And this is not coming from any kind of political place here, because we are, as I've mentioned, we are not members of any party. We're just concerned.
You guys are the best.
Thank you.
You really are, though.
Yeah.
And I think you have like started a dialogue, and it's really brave to do in a place like North Haven, because I think
we've started an amazing dialogue, and I'll tell you, I have been in constant communication with the former chief of the North Haven Police Department, Mike, and he has been wonderful, and he's been giving me a lot of advice, and him and I are now Facebook friends. And we talk, you know, we exchange messages. That the chief of police said he was very impressed with how everything was handled. And we met with him, and we had a wonderful dialogue.
Well, the police in North Haven are spectacular.
They're wonderful. And I think I've had a great dialogue with Mike Freda as well. And I say, Mike, we need to make this place more inclusive. This needs to be a place where people of all genders, colors, sexual orientations, just good people need to be welcome here.
And we believe that not because of a political affiliation, but because of our religious conviction.
Well, and I think you saw a convergence of that on the green. I think you saw, you know, Mike Freda, he and I have disagreed on several things, but I have to give him credit. He showed tremendous leadership that day.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He really did. And we had Wayne Lavender there talking from a religious standpoint. We had a number of folks come out and really show what a supportive and caring community there was. Police Commissioner Alden Mead was there, Mark Calafiore was there, Chief Tom McLaughlin was there, and like all these folks were really there not to be divisive, not to riot, not to cause issues, but to show that we can come together as a community and all stand for the same things. The Venn diagram of overlap between support for the Black community and the brown community doesn't have to exclude the officers who showed up and who were still respectful over the course of the protest, and leaders like Mike and Wayne, you know. So I was really, really impressed.
But our community needs to hear that. Something that really resonated with me at this meeting we had on the green last Saturday was one of the members of our Black community. She had tears in her eyes. And she said, I've been thinking about this ever since. It's been really heavy on my mind. But what she said was, for all of you, you go on this community forums, you talk to it, it's just banter. But for me, it's terrifying. And, you know, one of the things that she had said is, I go to the local Starbucks, I go local Target, I look around and I'm wondering which one of you is it? That said the things they did. This is unacceptable. We cannot have that. We cannot be truly a community at peace until those kinds of things are resolved. Until that one member of our community can go to Starbucks and look at all of us and say, this is a community of friends, then we have a problem.
Yeah, and you know, can you talk about a little bit about your experience on the community page? Like you posted
should I start with the tears?
I mean, it was rough to watch. It was rough to watch.
It was rough. I cried that night. I'm sorry to say, you know, my daughter saw me cry, and my husband was he was better. You're better with it. We've got threats, warnings. You know, I for some reason I honestly feel like I blame the media here. there's this big disparity, and there's, I'll put it this way. A lot of police officers are coming out and saying, hey, we're good people. We have families, right? You cannot judge us by some bad apples that are in our community of policing. In the same way, you look at all the protests, and the vast majority of them are good people. You cannot judge them by what some bad apples in the community did, right? By the looting. But this is the only thing that the media is portraying. My parents who live in Romania, they called us and they were afraid because basically what they're seeing on TV is that all of America's on fire. And so we had a number of people in our community who were absolutely terrified of us.
They were worried that there was going to be rioting. They were worried that there was. I'm not entirely sure where you would riot on the green.
I think the Catholic gift store was in some trouble.
I think they closed though, right?
I mean, I was taken aback about how afraid people were of us.
And I'm so glad that you definitely proved people wrong. And I was glad to see that multiple folks put out messages of positivity and support after the fact and just said there was no violence, no rioting, no looting. We all just kind of hung out on the green for a little bit, socially distant with our masks on,
This is North Haven. It was meant to be a place for our community to come and say, hey, these things are still happening day to day. There's microaggression in our town. There is people being not included as well as we should. We could do better. And instead, I got this, maybe it's a handful, I don't even have this group. They're absolutely terrified. And they lashed out.
People who see things in the press, which is violence and mayhem and horrible things going on, which should stop immediately. And if that's what you see, and then you hear, this is going to be in my town, it's going to be across the street from my house or down the street from my house or on my block, I can see why people get upset and afraid. And if I were in the same situation and somebody said, oh, by the way, we're going to be hosting this big event down the street from you or close by, and I didn't know what was going on, I completely understand that. Why people are afraid of that. And we weren't coming out to start a protest of violence. We weren't trying to do anything like that. We were trying to exercise our First Amendment rights of free speech. Freedom of religion. We had 3 different churches represented there. All those pastors spoke. They had great messages. And we were trying to practice our faith in saying, well, as Pastor Jim from the Hope Church said, there's no race in heaven. Once you're in heaven, you're there. And everybody's mixed. So, and that's what we were trying to show, that we can do things like that here as well.
But I think the other notable thing, even though we're talking about the nonviolence of the gathering itself, it is but it is stemming from some acts of substantial, horrific, and long-standing violence.
Absolutely.
So to meet the violence that we've seen spelled out on video for years now, and
there we go. There's a misread.
Welcome. But to meet that level of violence with nonviolence is a statement in and of itself.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at I recently watched the movie Selma, which is a very powerful movie that I think a lot of people should watch. And looking back at what the civil rights movement always stood for, it was always a message of nonviolence, right? That's what Martin Luther King preached. That entire movement basically consisted of people who were against social injustice and inequality, receiving a lot of violence from outside, but never returning it.
I think specifically Dr. King's
Dr. King is specifically
was nonviolent. I don't know. You can say that about the whole civil rights movement.
Not necessarily the whole, but that was we're talking about the principle of it.
And there have been different voices and different actions. in every organization. We're not saying they're
But
unified
I was,
by far, but we think a message of hope and of peace and of civil conversation. You can disagree. I mean, people disagree with me all the time. We have some interesting discussions from time to time too, because I lean in a different direction a little bit than she does sometimes. And, you know, that's okay. And we respect each other. And as long as you can agree to disagree, there's nothing wrong with that.
well, I mean,
But
there's agree to disagree, and then there's social injustice, which I think all of us here agree that things are not okay.
There has to be a line drawn in the sand somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah, things are not okay right now. And I think even discussing this entire, you know, lately we've all seen this whole defund the police movement, which is being constructed right now by certain people is to trying to eliminate policing altogether, which is not what it is.
No, it is. I think
Yeah,
they want
but
their
that-
police departments to be funded like North Haven. Like North Haven's total public safety budget is 11.4% of our annual budget. And
Right.
they're looking at places where, you know, 52% of the budget is police and thinking that like this is not sustainable because you can't have guidance counselors and social workers in schools with this.
And even I think that most police officers will agree.
Yeah.
Because I think I shared a video by John Oliver, which I thought made the point really, really well about this. And one of the things he was saying that, one of the things a lot of people agree, you know, there's really, the police is expected to solve all these problems, right? Mental health, call the police. Drug addiction, call the police. Somebody's dog got loose, call the police. There should be other resources in our communities.
I heard there was a framing I really enjoyed of this, which was just it is ridiculous on its face that children know a 3-digit number they can call to summon somebody who's heavily armed. There's a reason in a normal universe for that. And yeah, to your point, that does not actually fix, you know, hey, this thing got stolen. Nobody's here threatening me right now. I just need to file a report. I do not need somebody who's heavily armed. I need to file a report.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's fundamentally reactionary in that the crime has to happen before the police even show up, right?
Yeah.
We're not attacking the roots of where those problems come from. We're not getting at them before they even start. We're just asking the police to come and expecting that they're going to fix something by throwing people in jail.
Yeah, I mean, that there are entire communities out there, and I'm not saying North Haven, but we should be aware that there are entire communities out there that are boxed in by this heavily armed force with no other resources whatsoever.
Yep.
It's not right. You know, that's how we feel. I think our community, we believe that change needs to start in community like ours, a predominantly white community who believes that we're okay and nothing is wrong. And this is where dialogue and change needs to start.
I couldn't love you anymore, Kadruta. You're such a lovely person.
So,
Thank you very much.
Druida, we had hundreds of people there. I'm fairly sure all of us were there, although I'm not 100% sure because masks. It was a successful event. It made a statement. We had a lot of support from people driving by. Where does this go from there?
So we have a few initiatives. One of them is I was talking to a few friends today through text. So one thing that we're all sort of looking for is a sort of safe space North Haven community page where we can come and address things like this together as a community, respectfully and civilized. In other words, no bullies allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Our second one is I have been talking to some other parents in our school system, and I believe all of us here have sort of elementary age to middle age. I don't know, Stephen, your kids. So some parents wanted to know, this is applied to Amanda right here.
Mm-hmm.
She's a politician in charge. Whether it would be appropriate to introduce some sort of education curriculum in our North Haven schools to teach young children about inclusion, you know, racism to a certain, how to identify these things, how to include in an age-appropriate way. I'm not sure exactly what that is because I'm not an early childhood educator, but I watched did you watch the CNN, the Sesame
Street thing? Oh, it was so cute.
So something along those lines, I think, would be good in our schools. There's also some talk about starting a sort of an action group against racial injustice in our town, where our members of our communities can come together, and not just racial injustice, but also LGBTQ rights. Let's not forget it's Pride Month, right? June is Pride Month. So an action group that can take a stand when things like this. We've all heard what our friends had to say last week, right? Things were happening on our field, and things are happening in our schools that are not okay. But I think the idea of starting a curriculum in our schools would be great. So I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
So I'm fully supportive of it. I know that there is a limited amount that's being done currently.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is some Black history being taught. There are speakers that come in at the high school level and at the middle school level to talk to the students. But I think that there is more that can be done in North Haven for sure. And that's certainly something I'm happy to bring forward. I'm only one member of 9, but knowing my other members, I can't speak for them, but it's certainly something that I'm happy to bring forward as an idea.
Yeah, I want to say I'm not entirely sure about this because my pandemic has kind of wiped my brain a little bit. But before, we had a incredibly short session when nothing was passed through the legislature this year. But I had gone to a meeting where I believe Robin Porter was talking about some kind of curriculum that she wanted to put into classrooms at the state level. And I think they've been working on it for years and got it to the point where it would be offered as an elective within schools. They couldn't make it required for some reason, but
there's a huge funding issue because when you introduce new curriculum, there are places that don't receive a lot of funding, like Ansonia is a great example. It's it's not necessary. They don't have money to buy textbooks and keep paraprofessionals for their special needs students, So there's huge disparities in who would have access to this without significant funding from the state. So I think that's the source of this comes back to money.
But I imagine that'll come up in the next session.
I hope it does.
Hopefully they'll have a solution for working from home at that point for the legislature if we're still all locked away.
Yeah.
Certainly initiatives to educate parents are important too. What we tell our children at home is maximum importance. What they hear from us.
I mean, your kids are mirrors of you.
I'll tell you this conversation I had with my daughter. It was really interesting because she has a little friend who had started wearing boys' clothes, kind of sort of going towards identifying as transgender, but not. It's in there. So she came to me and asked me, well, why is my friend all of a sudden chopped her hair and is wearing all this boy clothes and wants to act a certain way? And I said, because it makes her happy. And she said, oh, okay. And that was the extent of the conversation that we had.
Not problematized for children, nearly as much as it is for adults.
Yeah.
It's really easy. It is that easy.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, our kids are
that easy.
Our kids have been introduced to many people of many different types, many different orientations. And at this point, they don't bat an eyelash. We were at an award ceremony, and there was just a fabulous gentleman wearing amazing heels and a tuxedo. And my daughter was like, honey, I love the heels. It's not an issue for anybody who doesn't make it an issue,
No. Our daughter's favorite show is Queer Eye.
It's so good. Are you watching season 5 in Philadelphia?
Yes.
And we've had this conversation that really, so for us, we're semi-religious people, but this is what the Christianity really means in terms of those 5 people coming together and helping each other out and helping people out, and that's how we view our faith. in a way, we said, oh, they're a lot more Christian than a lot of other people we know.
I really like that framing of the show. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's it's not that hard. It really isn't.
It is and it isn't. It's all how you address it, and it's all like watching people who are brave enough to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and get attacked on community pages in order to set an example and show that we can come together peacefully.
I mean, this attacks on the community page really was a drop in the bucket compared to what other people had to suffer.
This is true, but it still, I'm sure it didn't feel good at the time, and you guys still did it anyway, and I think it was good. The outcome was good.
I have to say that our town police, they're awesome. They were in constant communication with me, and they wanted to see all the threatening messages, and at the end of it they say, yeah, we weren't worried about you guys, we were just worried about all these people who were threatening you. But
we were also worried that there might be a contingent from somewhere. And Mike Frieda said it very eloquently when he was saying, we're not worried about the residents of North Haven as much as if somebody comes in from somewhere else with intent to cause chaos. And, that was the fear that people had. But
nobody left a pallet of bricks for us, though. Have you seen those?
Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank goodness.
I think I wrote to Amanda and Tim a message afterward. I said, hey, we left and we forgot to loot and pillage.
Completely forgot. Dang it.
Yeah, I think that they were worried. There were a few people in our community that the police was actually worried they might come attack us, but that didn't happen. And I told them, I think they're just keyboard warriors. They're just. But I would love to talk to those people.
And there were several people who were concerned that we would leave a lot of trash in the park. And so I personally walked through the entire green from the graveyard all the way over to Washington Ave, from up by the church down towards the town hall, and made sure there was not a piece of trash anywhere on the ground.
But look, if anybody is listening right now who was scared, if anybody is listening right now who sent me a message on Facebook, either threatening me or warning me, please reach out. I would love to have a cup of coffee with you.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Well, reach out. Come over. I'll make your coffee. I'll make cookies. Let's talk.
With social distancing.
Yeah. But please do. I would love to hear from you. And I would love to understand what you're so afraid of.
Well, on that note, thank you guys very much for coming on the pod and sharing with us like all the wonderful things that you've been doing. And I want everybody to keep an eye out for a new safe space.
Awesome. Yes. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do the safe space.
On behalf of Connecticut Inside Out, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.